In 1913, two brothers ran a successful motor part manufacturing company. They were making millions selling their parts to the Ford Motor Company. These two brothers were John and Hortense Dodge. Their legacy was built with hard work and the American dream. They started young watching their father work on steamboats and other mechanics, and soon grew up to become handymen and inventors themselves. Their dream was to create a more dependable and reliable car that people could trust. The introduction of the Dodge touring car in 1914, the Dodge brothers began down their own path as automotive leaders, producing a trustworthy car that would adapt to the needs of drivers, thus changing the way automakers design cars. In October of 1864, Daniel Rugg Dodge and his wife, Maria Dodge, gave birth to their first son, John, in Niles, Michigan. 4 years later, in 1868, they had another son, Hortense. Even though the two brothers were separated by age, they were very close and practically never left each other's sides. They spent lots of time watching their father work in his foundry and machine shop, where he built and maintained engines for riverboats. Even though they learned their father's trade quickly and barely made a living for the family, the Dodge brothers lived in poverty throughout their early childhood and high school lives. The automotive industry in America in 1900 was mostly led by Ford and Olds. Olds was producing a two-cylinder car that looked very similar to a wagon with an engine on the back, called the Oldsmobile Curved Dash. It had a curved dashboard similar to a wagon where the steering wheel and front seat would be located. They lacked doors, windows, and permanent roofs, and had a 5-gallon fuel and water tank. The Ford Model S at the time also had a two-cylinder engine that was positioned in the front rather than the back. It had a two-door body style and had 4 seats similar to the later Ford Model Ts or touring cars. The Model Fs could reach an estimated speed of 35 miles per hour. The Oldsmobile and Model Fs were the best car on the market at the time, but were far behind what the Dodge brothers would soon make only 9 years later. In 1902, the Dodge brothers bought the Bodwell building in Detroit, where they started their own Dodge Brothers machine shop. They soon began supplying axles and transmissions for Ransom Olds, creator of the single-cylinder Oldsmobile. The high-quality parts they produced brought them a good deal of money, which they invested back into their business to buy or make better machines and pay for expenses. Soon the duo was approached by Henry Ford on February 23, 1903, to discuss making parts of the Model A prototype car that Ford was working on. The brothers canceled their contract with Olds to begin a new contract with Ford. The Dodge brothers began building chassis for the Model A, which included Ford engines, transmissions, and axles. On June 16, 1903, the Dodge brothers made their first shipment of orders to the Ford Motor Company on Mack Avenue with horse-drawn hay racks. The Dodge brothers made a profit of $250 apiece on their parts. In 1904, the Dodge brothers supplied Ford with 1,255 chassis. By spring of 1905, the Dodge brothers supplied Ford with 400 rigs a month, which were only transmissions and engines. The Dodge brothers continued to invest their profits from Ford into their business. In 1910, John and Hortense expanded their shop to the Hamtramck plant, which is a larger facility that could keep up with their continually growing orders from Ford. The Hamtramck plant was a 30-acre complex that allowed them to become a bigger and better-known company. The plant was very effective due to having 2 railroad lines going through it. This increased the productivity and speed that supplies were made and delivered. Dodge continued with their orders and made 180,000 transmission axle sets, with larger orders directly behind these. The Dodge brothers continued to supply Ford with parts but began to start designing their own car. They wanted to build a better and more user-friendly car that would change the way that people drove and operated their vehicles. In August of 1913, John resigned from his position as vice president and director of the Ford Motor Company in order to avoid conflict of interest between the Dodge brothers and Ford. At the same time, they enlarged their Hamtramck plant to produce their own car effectively. The Dodge brothers gave the Ford Motor Company their 1 year's notice of leaving the partnership with Ford and no longer continued to supply him with parts. They continued making plans for their new car, which would be a 4-cylinder vehicle that was more advanced and durable than many other cars before them. The Dodge car that came out of the Hamtramck factory on November 10, 1914 was a great improvement from the Ford Model Ts that the Dodge brothers had been working on the previous year. Weighing in at a total of 2 tons and 250 pounds, the Dodge brothers' first car was a black touring car with wooden spoke wheels, real leather, a sliding gear 3-speed transmission, and cone-face clutches. The Dodge brothers automobile was a 35 horsepower 4-cylinder with an L-head engine that had a 12-volt battery and an automatic starter, which reduced the amount of cranking that was needed. This made it easier for women to drive. Women drivers were becoming more popular because fewer women were working in factories and mills and were staying home with their families. This also gave women more rights and freedom by being able to go more places. It also had a hand-controlled fuel pump that made it possible to climb up steep hills easier and with more power, making it no longer necessary to climb up a hill in reverse like many older cars like Ford Model Ts needed to do. This changed the way drivers drove and how roads were made because they no longer needed to have spots where drivers could turn around and reverse up hills. When it first came on the market, it cost $785, which is more than twice the price of other cars in the market, but was worth the extra cost. Their new car was a huge success because of its reliability and power. The first car dealer to sell Dodge's 1914 car was Cumberland Motors, and which was very proud to be known as the world's first Dodge dealer. Their car was especially effective in the military and when used in World War I, where several war generals ordered Dodge vehicles due to their horsepower and proficiency on rough terrain. By 1915, the Dodge brothers put their Roadster out on the market. After their first year of being under production, they were the third best-selling automaker behind Ford and Olds. They also produced a two-door enclosed sedan that could be used as a winter car by adding permanent windows to the sedan that were sold separately at retailers. In 1917, due to pressures from a growing truck industry, the Dodge brothers started looking into making a new truck that wasn't based on the chassis they already had. Trucks were becoming very popular for ranchers and farmers because the outworked horse-drawn carriages provided them with a faster way of moving their goods and supplies. They made an ambulance truck for World War I and then created a civilian version, the screen-side business truck, that could carry a 1,000-pound payload. It sold for $885. They also started exporting cars, producing 90,000 cars to send to dealers in Canada. In 1918, they produced more vehicles for the Allied forces during World War I, creating a 155mm gun recoil system to apply to all their vehicles for the Army. Dodge cars were mostly used by the French and American forces during the war. By 1919, the Dodge brothers were becoming very wealthy and famous. They had already produced a total of 4 cars in 5 years and produced a 5th in 1919. They produced a completely enclosed 4-door sedan, very similar to their 2-door sedan in 1916, which was very popular with large families. Selling about 400,000 cars that year, they made a pretty profit. The motor car business had become extremely successful for the Dodge brothers. Things turned for the worst when the Dodge brothers were touring in 1920 at the New York Auto Show and Horns fell ill with pneumonia. As Horns tried to recover in the hospital, John never left his side, even insisting on staying in the hallway at night to look over his little brother for days on end. John soon came down with pneumonia and died 10 days later. Horns survived for a few months longer and later died from pneumonia as well. At this time, the Dodge brothers had become America's second best car selling company. The Dodge Brothers Company was given to their wives, who put Frederick J. Haynes in charge of the company. He kept the company going for 4 more years, maintaining second in sales for a year, before it dropped to third. They stayed there due to their popularity of the all-steel business coupe that they launched. In 1925, the Dodge Brothers' wives, Ivy Ann Hawkins and Christina Anna Thompson, decided to sell the company to Walter B. Chrysler for $146 million, the biggest company purchase up to that date. The Dodge brothers led a great legacy as inventors and businessmen and helped the car industry develop into what it is today. The Dodge industry grew from their 1914 tourer cars to the Dodge muscle cars like the Dodge Chargers we see today. The Dodge brothers started a new decade of car industry, making a more accessible and user-friendly car that changed the way people built cars forever. Car manufacturers no longer just wanted cars to be able to drive forward, they wanted a car that was more stylish and dependable, that could do whatever the driver needed. They struck out to build a car that was more stylish, affordable, durable, and dependable for everyone, and succeeded. Through their electric starter and hand-fuel pump to climb hills forwards, the Dodge brothers changed the way many other car companies made cars, such as Chevrolet and even Ford. By building this better car and revolutionizing the car industry, Dodge brothers showed that with hard work and determination, that 2 underprivileged kids from Detroit could create one of the longest-lasting car companies ever and leave behind a great legacy to every car manufacturer in the future.